So we have a question that we want to answer today. That question is, this festival of Hanukah, this dedication of the light, the dedication of the temple, is it actually a festival that we should be keeping? And if we keep it, is there any value in it? What is the background? Does the Bible actually tell us that this is a festival we should be keeping? Now, I need to just firstly give you a little bit of background to the festival of Hanukah. Around 168 years before the Messiah, there was a Syrian Greek emperor that went about and that wanted to get everybody all over to accept his way of worship. And he also came into Israel, oppressed them, and then desecrated the temple by having pigs sacrificed on the altar. They then went around all throughout the land of Israel and trying to convince the people to just stop worshiping God in the way that they were instructed and to start worshiping the way that he would want them. And so in one of the towns, which is not too far from us here in Jerusalem, which is the town of Munihin, they had an altar erected in the city square or the town square. They actually had a pig there on the altar, and they then invited all the people in the town to come and participate in this. There was a particular family that was the priestly family that resided in that town and that was responsible for the priestly work in the town, which was the Maccabee family. And Matthias Maccabee, the father, had these sons. And then there was a man that actually went up to the altar, ready to go and sacrifice. And then Judas Maccabee ran up to the altar, and people were actually thinking that he was going to come and sacrifice. And so the guy on the altar hesitated, and Judas Maccabee got onto the altar, grabbed the knife, and he killed the man on the altar. This resulted in a revolt that in the beginning stages was more of an ethnic cleansing type of thing, to get people out of idolatry. It wasn't a revolt against this regime that would oppress them. That was not their original intention. But then this thing gained so much momentum that eventually, 3 years later, they threw the yoke of the enemy off their shoulders. They became free. They cleansed the temple. And then when they were ready to dedicate the temple, they realized that they never got oil. They only found this one pitcher of oil that they could use. Now, in the temple, there's a specific measurement. That measurement, a pitcher, is enough to fill up the candelabrum in the temple, which had 7 of these bowls that they had to fill with oil. And it was enough to fill it, all 7 of them, but it was only enough for one day, because the oil inside every one of these bowls would be enough for a candle, for that candle to burn for the whole day. Then they had to fill it again. So every day they had to put new oil into the candelabrum. They then decided, or the menorah, they then decided they're going to dedicate the temple in any case. They can't wait. So they sent some people to go and get oil in the Galilee, which was a 4-day journey there and 4 days back. In other words, an 8-day journey. Which means that they would dedicate the temple. the oil would burn, it would finish after one day. 1 week later, when they would get the new oil, they would then again dedicate the temple. That was the initial idea. But to their amazement, something incredible happened. The incredible thing that happened was the oil that was only supposed to burn for 1 day lasted 8 days. And so this was then instituted in 165 before the Messiah as a festival. Now, we all know that the last book in the Old Testament that is part of what we consider to be the Canaan is Malachi. And Malachi is 400 years before the Messiah. So this is an event that takes place between Malachi and what we have as the New Testament. So it's not part of what was considered to be part of this Tanakh, as we call it in the Hebrew, the Old Testament. It was post-Old Testament writings, actually. So the question is now, should we keep it? Well, then I also have to go back and say that the festivals, the Muadim, which God instructed, was already in the Torah described as the festival of Pesach, and then the unleavened bread, the Feast of Weeks, and then that great day of first fruits, which is the great day of Shavuot, the 50th day. Then the other three would be what we call Yom Teruach, or the Feast of Trumpets, Yom Kippur, and Sukkot. Those are the 7 festivals. These are the things which God commanded the people to keep. So this is not a festival which was commanded in the Torah to be kept. This is now a festival which the people introduced, and especially then Judas Maccabee, who was the one that led this revolt. And when this miracle then took place, they said, we have to celebrate the miracle. So it's not a festival in the same sense as the other 7 annual festivals, but it's a commemoration. It's a commemoration of a miracle of light, a miracle that took place, which undoubtedly nobody can say that this was not a miracle. It was a miracle. Oil that was enough for 1 day, burned for 8 days. So, do we have any reference about this in the New Testament? Because this is now an event that took place after the Old Testament, as we know it, was closed as a Canaan. It happened in between. It's 250 years after Malachi. So, what now? Well, I want to read something to you. Please go with me to the book of John. And in the book of John, we read the following. In John chapter 10, verse 22, it says, and it was at Jerusalem the feast of the dedication. Now, the word that is translated here as the feast of the dedication, the word feast is not really in the original. The word that is here is, you could also read it to say, and it was at Jerusalem the dedication, or the commemoration of the dedication, and it was winter. Now, that's very important. At the moment, it's winter in Jerusalem, and the feast of dedication, or this commemoration of dedication, takes place on the 25th day of the month of Kislev. And that's exactly, it's around about November, December, depending on whether we have a leap year or not. So we know from the description here that this was actually this particular festival, which we today know as Hanukah, which tonight that festival actually started here. And again, I want to say, if people want to follow that and see how this is celebrated, then you can join in on zionsquarecam.com, and if you log in on that, you can actually see what's happening right in front of our house here on Zion Square, where they are celebrating it, where there's a menorah, a Hanukah as we call it, with the 9 branches. Now, some people also say, why is there a difference then between this Hanukah and that which is in the temple? In the temple we see 7. We see the servant lamp with 6 branches, but the Hanukah is 9. It's a servant lamp plus 8 branches. Because in the festival or this commemoration of Hanukah, it actually has to do with the oil that would burn for 8 days. And so we have a servant lamp, which is the middle one, serving the other 8, which has to do with the 8 days. So what we do see here is that verse 23, it says, and it was at Jerusalem, this dedication or this commemoration of the Feast of Dedication, and it was winter. Verse 23 says, and Yeshua walked in the temple in Solomon's porch. Now, that's very important. Where did Yeshua actually live? Yeah, he lived in Galilee. Now, it's quite a distance from the Galilee to Jerusalem. And we actually see that Yeshua only came to Jerusalem to celebrate the feasts. He was never here at any other time than the time of the festivals. So, and for them to come here, just to come here and go back would be 8 days' journey. This is not an easy journey. It's not like today when we get in our car, 2 hours later we're up in the Galilee. Or we get into a motor car over there, 2 hours later we're in Jerusalem. No, for them it was a long walk. It was a 4-day journey. They had to have some very special reason to do it. And so just from that and from the circumstances, we now see that Yeshua comes to Jerusalem. Why? Because he wanted to celebrate the feast. This dedication. He's coming here for the commemoration. And then at that particular point in time, there's this discussion between him and the people in the temple. And he then specifically at this commemoration of the dedication uses that which is the central theme around it, which is miracles. And he speaks about a declaration of him as the Messiah being validated by miracles. The whole discussion between him and the people that accuse him here are, well, if you doubt whether I'm the Messiah or not, look at the miracles. He is the light of the world. And he says, I am confirmed as this light of the world through what? Through the miracles. They want to stone him then because he associates himself so much with the Father, that he and the Father is one and that he's the Son of God, that they're actually saying that to him. He says, we don't want to stone you because of the miracles, but we want to stone you because you say that you are the Son of God. And that you are saying that you are God. That's what they are saying to him. Because they say, because you make yourself God, verse 33. That you being a man, make yourself to be God. And then Yeshua answers them and says, is it not written, I say, you are gods? In other words, why is this so difficult for you? We're all created in the image of God. But then he's also saying we need to walk in this miracle life. And then eventually we see how they want to continue with the stoning. He then gets away, he escapes, and then he goes over the Jordan, and he stays on the other side of the Jordan, where he goes to the place where John the Baptist would baptize him, where he would go through his mikvah. And it then says John did no miracles, but Yeshua did a lot of miracles, and a lot of people then said, this must be the Messiah. This must be the Messiah. So, from this, I want to say, Yeshua validated it. He would then also celebrate it. Does that mean that this is a commandment for us to celebrate it? No. I really want to say there is no commandment for us to celebrate it. But there is an example for us. And if Yeshua celebrated it, I think it's okay for us to celebrate it. But then we need to understand from what perspective we need to celebrate it. It's not just about a religious activity. Because if it's about a religious activity, let's not celebrate it, because then there is no value in it. But when we start looking at it and we say, let us celebrate the fact that we too have been called by Yeshua, the light of the world, and that we too now are his temple. And yes, the light that was supposed to just burn in our lives for this time that we live could go beyond that, go into an 8th day, in other words, into eternity, or as we call it in Hebrew, the Olam Haba. In other words, this life of light, the fact that I have light in my life must now go beyond this life and carry me into eternity. But it's a life in which we understand that this light that is inside of us wants to be manifested in miracles. And I then want to say, if we want to celebrate or commemorate this Feast of Dedication, then let's commemorate it from this point of view, to say, let's put our faith out there. Let's be challenged. Let's be challenged to walk in the miraculous. To let the light of God shine so much inside of us and through us that miracles and signs and wonders will happen around us. People will be healed. People will be set free. That we will see God do the supernatural around us. And if that is what we are challenged with during this time, then it has value. Because then it's not just a celebration and a religious activity, but it's actually stirring us up to go into a life where the light of God in our lives is resulting in a life of trusting God and seeing miracles happen around us. May this Hanukah to you be a time of light and a time of miracles, where you will truly be able to say, a great miracle happened here. You know, the saying around Hanukah is exactly this, where it says, Nes Gadol Haya Po. A great miracle happened here. May that be the testimony for every one of us during this time of Hanukah. Chag Sameach. Happy Hanukah.